The solution to our problem means that we have to have our kids employed, meaningful employment. They have to go to school. We have to get them out of the streets, and that's what affirmative action is trying to achieve.
My name is Bettinas, and I've been working on an initiative to democratize UC Berkeley, an initiative that would diversify the leadership of this institution. Currently, the Constitution calls for a diverse board of regents, diverse by race, by sex, and by class. Okay, but how it's instituted, there's no language that institutes it in the Constitution. So the governor can get away with appointing his buddies who give him money. So we have to change that. But maybe what we tried to get this on the ballot for '94, and we thought that because of the abuses that we've seen in the executive, that we would be able to succeed. But in talking to some of the folks when we were down at the I was down at the Students Association conference at UCLA. We were talking about affirmative action. The consensus there was that yes, we have to go on the offensive. We have to accomplish something. We have to restructure these institutions. Maybe what we did last time wasn't enough. Maybe we're not really going after a big enough part of what we want to change. Maybe we have to talk about providing more resources to all of higher education. But does it really have to be something where we're saying we need to diversify the faculty of this institution, we need to diversify the leadership of this institution? Does that have to be a question of our rights? I mean, are we backing off on something if we don't go for this, if we don't put a positive message forward? So I'd like to ask the panel if they support this kind of initiative. I'd like to ask each one of them, besides the ones that we've heard, maybe in addition, if there's any reconsideration, if there's some kind of support for a positive initiative that will provide greater diversity and greater opportunity for everyone.
Angie made, I think, some important points strategically about the difficulty of the initiative process that I think people need to hear. Because I think it's easier for people who've never been involved at that level of politics to say, oh, let's do this, let's do that, but they've never really been out there trying to collect signatures. Okay, that is hard work. And so anybody who's serious, it's one thing, if you want to do it symbolically, pretend you've been doing something, that's one thing. If you want to win, then you got to know that it takes money, it takes lots of people. Now, I actually think the alternative idea is a good one, because I think it might help, but I recognize, I think, I listened to Angie, I know it would be very difficult. I think you're right in principle, that we should be talking about how to expand opportunity, how to really talk about restructuring this university to increase it, because one of the problems in this is that people don't realize that affirmative action has actually done very little. I mean, we have this incredibly diverse undergraduate population. I feel good about that. But if you look at our faculty, if you look at the way this university, for example, has used, it's what they call targeted opportunity positions, or XOP positions, which were supposed to be created to bring greater diversity in the faculty. Most of those positions have gone to the spouses of faculty, most of whom are not people of color. So there's a real need to look at ways to expand opportunity, to restructure, to go beyond just affirmative action. Problem is a strategic one. What can we do at this point now to win, to fight against this attack? I regret the fact that we're in this defensive position, but that's what we are, because Ed is right. We won this in the context of a movement. We didn't win this out of charity. We didn't win this out of a sense, oh wow, we've been discriminated, we need to do something else now. Let's change, we have a change of heart. That's not why we won this. They gave up affirmative action under duress. Okay, they want to do that. All right? And now they're recognizing that maybe the time is right to take it back away. So we got to fight to retain it, but then we do need to take the next step, which is to talk about how to expand opportunity, how to address this problem of the widening gap in income. I mean, we got a whole bunch of things to deal with. And hopefully, what I'm hoping is that if we are successful in how we organize this campaign, What we can do, we begin to do, is to build a new majority coalition that is willing to embrace the diversity of this state, to address the larger issue, which I think that Bettina spoke to, which is really beneath the surface, which is really what this is all about. The fact that we are changing as a society, and many people are afraid of that change. And others are willing to embrace it. And we need to give those who are willing to embrace it some support and say it's okay to be out front and saying that this change needs to happen and make it go forward. Unfortunately, right now, I think we're in a defensive mode, though. And we need to get beyond that, but I think that's realistically where we're at right now.
Yeah, I worked on the Rainbow Coalition and the Sane Alternatives Coalition, which was formed by Keith Carson, the Alameda County Supervisor, and the National People's Campaign, which is in San Francisco. And, you know, we're doing something at 29 Laney College. We've got May 6th. A lot of people know about all this. But I see a low turnout here. Students are going to classes, coming and going. But, you know, people shouldn't feel discouraged about this because this is just, I think, just the beginning. And that there are many, many, many things going on. I'm going to large numbers of meetings, and there are large numbers of people that are turning out that are supporting affirmative action, that are fighting against these cutbacks. And so we really need to be encouraged that, you know, things are happening. So I know a lot of people might be sitting around and thinking, wow, where's everybody at?
Do you have a question?
It's happening. It's happening.
Do you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to bring that out. You know, so people know what's
Can we
going on.
take the last two questions because we're running out of time for this session?
Okay, I'll make my question very short. Right now, in the campaign that's been mounted by the opponent of affirmative action, the affirmative action as a policy has been redefined as encouraging race and gender preferences. I just wonder that based on the simple ways in which the electorate tends to understand issues in the society, would you guys consider changing the name affirmative action or redefining it? I mean, or creating a phrase, a very simple phrase that for the majority, I mean, not everybody can follow all of the intellectual points that we've been given here today. Not everybody is listening. Given that, would you consider creating a phraseology or a new name that actually reflects the ideals or the real meaning of affirmative action so that the ordinary people out there can just go along with that? Affirmative action is positive. Create a name or a phraseology that reflects all the positive things about it. It's a very simple suggestion.
I think actually there is a group which is trying to organize a counter initiative. The group is, from what I understand from reading in the press, a group of black conservative Republicans. And they seem to have chosen a positive name for their initiative, something like the Opportunity for All Initiative, Expanded Opportunities Initiative, or something of this kind. I haven't seen the initiative, though, and I'd like to see what it is. I like to second what a number of people have said. It would be good to have, I think, a counter initiative with a positive thrust, but it is not an easy thing to do, and we have to think really carefully about that sort of thing. But as far as name is concerned, I have to tell you, the name affirmative action seems very positive to me. And I worry about, I mean, to me this seems, you know, I think the government has such a role to take affirmative action to right so many centuries of wrong. Unfortunately, no words we take are immune from twisting. That's what they've done with the California Civil Rights Initiative. That's precisely it. So I'm not sure that we can win it back, okay? I'm not sure that we can find words that they can't twist because that's the name of their game. So I don't know if we can win that way, okay? It's a thought.
Before affirmative action, we did have another name, and it was equal opportunities. And everywhere you went, all the employers were an equal opportunity employers, all the universities. We had to change that because even though everybody said the words, affirmative action made it very clear that it's not enough to say that you're an equal opportunity employer or something like that. You had to take some very specific action. That's why it was called affirmative action. Now, what people need to be aware of, is that everybody gained from it. It's not just minorities. White males gain more than anybody else. And the reason that I say that is because we know that white women gain more than anybody else, but who do they marry? And what kind of children do these people that marry white males have? So white males now have wives and spouses and so forth that have gained much from it. Their children are doing very well. But in addition to that, before affirmative action, and that was before affirmative action at the university, we used to hire people by referral. When you had the term the Old Boys Network, they had a meeting. It meant that somebody called you and said, hey, by the way, my son is going to be here for the summer. Can you hire him? You hired him. Now, affirmative action has made it almost impossible to get hired without a job description being very clear. That has to be clear with the position. It has to go through a whole process, an advisory committee. This made it possible for white males that did not belong to the Old Boys Network to get in the process. And I think these people forget that there's a long history and that it has favored everybody, not just people of color. And I think the problem is that when we talk about news bites, you have to say everything in 2 words or 3 words, and there's no way you can explain affirmative action in 3 words.
If the panel would like to take more questions, we could keep going. Yeah.
Perhaps they could go to the microphone.
There's a microphone up in the front.
What is your view or take on class-based affirmative action?
I'd like to respond to that. I think it's important, but only part. That is, I think it's a proper idea, but only part of the solution. And the reason is, in my opinion, race and gender are independent variables. It is not the case that if we split up a limited pie and did it only on the basis of class, that we actually would see the kind of diversity that I think we want to see. It really is the case that gender and race have an independent history and an independent current activity. And one could easily imagine if one went exclusively to class-based affirmative action, that the pie could further shrink. And then you would have, the kind of unity which the other side is trying to achieve, namely a unity on the basis precisely of race and gender. No problem at all. We're letting all of these poor people in, they all happen to be white. So I don't think that we can do that. That is, we ought to do that, but we ought not at the same time to give up the need actually affirmatively to seek diversity by race and gender also.
I just wanted to ask about specific mechanics of campaigning. In particular, how does this campaign reach into the community, into neighborhoods, into labor unions, into churches, in such a way that these communities will become more solid and demonstrate more solidarity? Because one of our big problems in society is that people don't talk to each other very much, and since they're atomized and don't talk to each other, they get all their information from the television, which means they get all their information from money and from the vested interests. How, therefore, does a progressive campaign act to get, to create permanent communities which will act in their own interest?
Anyone would like to take a shot at that? Maybe Andy, before you leave?
I don't know about you, but I don't want to keep having to do this time and time and time again. And part of the motivation behind the individuals and organizations who are trying to put together the campaign for the 1 million signatures is that we would like to create an infrastructure that will be in place so that we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. A lot of us have the experience of Proposition 187 of trying in August to do by November what might have been possible had we had another year or it was possible for us in San Francisco, but in Los Angeles, which is where the bulk of the voters are, it's going to take much longer in order to build that base. But once that base is built, you're right, it's going to be important that it be, that these issues, not just this time for affirmative action, but next time for workers' rights, or next time for peace and justice, or getting us out of whatever mess our next president and legislatures get us into, that we've got organization. What the right wing did in this country in the 1970s and the 80s is something I wish they hadn't done. And it's a lesson I wish we had learned. We basically, after the 60s, let our organizations go to the ground. They turned into shells after the 1960s. They shrunk down. I remember being in Mississippi in 1980 and being amazed at how little was left after the civil rights movement in Mississippi in the 1960s. The same thing goes for Washington, D.C. and California and any other place. It's very important this time that we do what, unfortunately, the right wing has done, that we keep our institutions and our networks alive, and that we build them strong enough to last for our entire lifetimes.
I would take the last comment.
I'd like to add something to that, we need to get our own ducks in a row, which means the campuses. If we bring shell organizations to coalitions with organizations off the campuses, then we're not that strong. And I don't mean, and I stress again, as I said before, by the campuses I don't mean one campus or two. There are 200 some odd community college campuses. That is where children of the working class go. That is where we need to organize. If we build out to those campuses, then you have a direct link to the community. And so the best thing from the campuses that we can do is to get them all organized, not just the elite ones. That is a big task. You say, why are you looking at such a small, why are you setting your sights so low? I'm not setting my sights low. That's a very big task, and that task will automatically link up to the community, because that's where the kids of working families are to be found in very large numbers.
Thank you. I would like at this time to conclude this panel. You may come up and speak with any of the panelists and ask them personal a question. Thank you very much all for being here and participating, and hopefully we'll see people back here for the workshops where you could have more discussion one-on-one. Thank you very much.